What's going on, Thunder Nation? Time for another edition of Musing with Malsy, and it's time for us to check in with our affiliate up in Northern California. We're talking with Nick Nollenberger, voice of the Barracuda. Nick, thanks so much for taking some time to visit with us.
It's great to chat with you, Malsy, and happy summer. And thanks for the opportunity. Always fun to kind of connect and get ready for an upcoming season.
Sounds like you've had a busy start to the summer. It's been pretty exciting over there in Barracuda and Sharks country.
Yeah, this has been one of the more exciting off seasons I can remember. I'm entering now it'll be 9, so I've seen a lot, I feel like, during my time, but this has been one of the most exciting times for sure. And you can probably span the existence of the Sharks organization over its 30 plus years. This is one of the most exciting times the organization has embarked on. Now, they've had more fruitful, more successful times. There's no question about it. But to have the season the Sharks had last year, it was a struggle. It got better, I felt like, at moments, but it was a rough season. There's no question. So to win the number one overall pick, win the lottery, and select a kid in Macklin Celebrini that many have pegged to be a franchise cornerstone, and then to have the connection with the Junior Sharks. He played a couple of years in San Jose. His dad works for the Golden State Warriors. So to have that connection is pretty awesome as well. So the organization is really excited about the direction. He's already signed his entry-level contract, so he'll be with the team next year. Will Smith, who they drafted 4th overall last year, he signed this offseason as well. He'll be up top with the big club. They added some veteran players like Tyler Toffoli, a big name who can score some goals, can provide depth at the wing position. Excuse me. There's a lot to be excited about. Wenberg, a guy they brought in as a real kind of solid center iceman, amongst other transactions. So it's a fun time. There's no question. We'll see how long it takes from this point, but you feel like the rebuild has kind of hit the floor, if you will, and now you're starting to ascend. You're starting to fill the cupboards a little bit with some prospects.
Nick, in regards to the Sharks and the Barracuda last season, it seemed like there were a ton of injuries. Do you feel like they're in a better position as we get into training camp this year?
Well, as you know, it's just part of the business, right? It's a physical sport. Injuries are going to happen. That's something the Sharks dealt with really at all tiers. You can talk about the Thunder, you can talk about the Barracuda, you can talk about the Sharks. I mean, all 3 levels were impacted, obviously, with health, and that's just something you deal with, something you can't always predict. But the one thing I think the Sharks have made a concerted effort this season is not just supporting these young players with veteran players who can kind of show them the ropes and guide them along, but they've gotten more depth. So if you do have injuries, you aren't really, really thin at various positions. I think the depth is much better than it was even last year. And what helps in terms of depth is experience for young players. It's hard for these young guys sometimes to be thrust into different roles higher in the lineup and be expected to have success. Now they've got an additional year under their belt. They're comfortable with their surroundings, comfortable with the league, and you expect some of these younger players to be that much more advanced. And then on top of that, you bring in veteran players with a lot of experience who can help insulate and also provide production as well. We mentioned Toffoli's and the Wenbergs up top. You can look at the American Hockey League level with the Barracuda and the same type of thing. They brought in Andrew Poturalski, who's been to the Calder Cup final for 4 straight years. Now, there's a little bit of an asterisk there because during COVID, there wasn't a Calder Cup final. But the last 4 times they've conducted the finals, he's been part of it. He's won 2 of them. He's a 2-time scoring champion in the AHL. So that's a big piece. He'll likely be with the Barracuda. You look at a guy like Lucas Carlson on the back end, kind of a puck-moving dynamo of sorts on the power play in particular. He'll be most likely with the Barracuda. A lot of production at the AHL level. Jimmy Schultz is a guy they brought in, also from Coachella Valley, a teammate of Podorowski. Been to the Calder Cup final the last couple of years. A really good, solid shutdown guy who will most likely be with the Barracuda. So, they've really made a strong push to support not just the NHL club, but the AHL club. And then that trickles down, in my mind, to the East Coast and the ECHL and the Wichita Thunder, because you won't get guys, again, thrust into positions that maybe they aren't ready for. Instead, they can marinate where they should be, slotted where they should be. And then ultimately, you hope they have more success.
Speaking of prospects that were in Wichita and spent some time with you guys, do you feel like any of those individuals could make an impact at the American League level from last season to this upcoming season?
It's going to be interesting. You look at the goalie position, I think is probably the most intriguing element of the Barracuda. Really, you could probably say the Sharks organization, where it's at, where it'll be in the next couple of years. But you saw Magnus Krona last year. You saw Georgi Romanov last year. Those guys played in the ECHL. They played a majority of the season in the AHL, and they even got games in the NHL. So those are guys in that position as a whole. The goalie room is going to be very intriguing. At this point, those are your two starting goalies, at least the projected starters at the AHL level. And we'll see where things shake out. The organization added Gabe Carriere, a goalie out of Vermont last year at the end of the season, to an ATO. He's signed to an AHL contract for this season. If everybody's healthy, he's likely going to be in Wichita. And although he didn't have a great team in front of him and that kind of impacted his numbers, they're pretty excited about just the raw ability and kind of the instinctual ability of this goalie. So we'll see how things shake out. But I look at the goalie position again as probably the most intriguing at all three levels of the organization. And now there's going to be other guys I think that'll push for jobs at the AHL level that you saw last year. We'll see how things shake out. But the organization added quite a few guys on AHL contracts at the end of the year. Donovan Houle, Lucas Van Roboys, Luke Granger, all added to AHL contracts as forwards. And then on the back end, Jeremy Bushler, a right shot D who's got some good size, added to an AHL contract as well. So those are going to be kind of the fringe guys who could potentially be in Wichita and will likely also get some games in the AHL as well. So, there's a lot to shake out over the next month and a half, but certainly I think there's a buzz within the organization. And it's not just because of Celebrini and Smith. It's because of the other prospects as well. That should kind of help fill in from the bottom and all the way to the top. So hard to kind of pinpoint one or two guys that spent time in the ECHL last year, and now we'll see where they shake out this year. But there's lots of guys who could make an impact, and we'll see how it shakes out in camp.
Yeah, for instance, a guy like Mitch Russell, who
Yep.
came on late in the season last year, he went up to you guys. He started to find his groove, and I think he had a couple of goals up at the American League level late last year, right?
Yeah, he's a guy very interesting, right? He's had a long, windy kind of road since he signed an entry-level contract as an undrafted guy. It's been very marred by injuries, but to see him last year really finally find his groove in Wichita, play a lot of games, I think he was enjoying himself kind of for the first time in a handful of years. I mean, it's been a tough road for him. There's no question. I think physically it's been challenging mentally as well, to miss the amount of time that he has missed, and he's been dealing with kind of an upper body type injury, neck, head area. And those are challenging, physically again, but also mentally. So to see him come up, I think he played the last two games. I don't think he played more than that, if I'm not mistaken, but he did score his first AHL goal. And you could just tell his visceral reaction of not just joy, but relief to be able to score that goal. And confidence goes a long way. You know this with young players. Confidence can really help propel a guy to the next level. And for him to score that goal, I think that gives him a lot of confidence that not only does he belong at the pro level, but he could play and be successful at the AHL level. And when you're down the hall from an NHL club, you have success with the Barracuda, you've got a chance to open eyes to, ultimately play in the NHL. So, yeah, Mitchell Russell's a really interesting guy. He's on the final season this upcoming year on a 3-year ELC. And this is kind of make or break for him to make an impact, I think, in this organization. And for him to have that little bit of success last year, I think is huge. Likely he'll be in rookie camp and then into the rookie face-off, which is kind of an annual 4-day, 3-game event where you've got a handful of NHL clubs represented by prospects. He'll likely play in that. We've seen him play in it the last couple of years. And then hopefully he goes into NHL camp, puts his best foot forward, and can solidify himself a job at the AHL level. I know that's his goal. I think his goal this year is to be an AHLer, and we'll see how things shake out for Mitchell Russell this year.
Nick Nollenberger joining us. Nick, wanted to talk a little bit about the Sharks' new head coach. I think that's a really awesome story to see a guy who started in the ECHL and make his way up, and now he seems like it's going to be a very positive thing for the organization. And I have trouble saying his name.
Warsofsky.
Warsofsky. There we
Warsofsky,
go.
yes. Yeah, it's a really cool story because he's a guy who didn't play pro hockey, kind of had to work his way through multiple levels. I think he was in Division III hockey at one point, but he was in the ECHL, South Carolina, which all of a sudden is kind of a hotbed for NHL coaches. I think there's now 3 South Carolina Stingray alumni who are head coaches in the NHL. Warsofsky being one of those. He's a young guy. He's now in his later 30s. But I think when they were going through this coaching search, they were looking for a guy who was up and coming, and he certainly was. He had a lot of success in the ECHL. He won a Calder Cup in the American Hockey League with Chicago a couple of years ago. They liked him when they were going through the interview process a couple of years ago, and they ultimately settled on David Quinn, but he was part of that interview process for the head coaching job. They ended up hiring him as an assistant. So he was able to get that experience under his belt as well. He hadn't been in the NHL prior. So he got a couple of years as an assistant under his belt, and then you circle up for the most recent hiring process for the head coaching job. And it just kind of was a perfect fit for him. He's at that point in his career with the experience and the success. He's highly touted as a kind of one of those young risers amongst the coaching ranks. So really excited about where he can take this team. We saw it a couple of years ago in Arizona with the Coyotes as a kind of a rebuilding franchise. And it's a unique job, right? Because you aren't necessarily going to have success, at least not expected to have a ton of success. But are you helping the prospects along? Are you are you seeing tangible results that get you at least excited about the future? And I think that's where he fits in. He's been really good with the young guys. I think he can relate with the young players, also can relate with the veterans. He's just very personable. And as you heard him during his press conference, when they introduced him with the Sharks, he was really emotional as well. I think he's a humble guy who's going to, be a perfect fit for where this organization is at currently. Expectations are not to be a playoff team next year, but what kind of steps can they make in the right direction under his tutelage?
Nick, do you guys expect any more moves at the AHL level for the Barracuda as we get closer?
It's funny you asked that because I just got off the phone with our GM, Joe Will, earlier today. And for now, I think things are kind of at a standstill, but we saw last year where they added quite a few guys at the end of the offseason that were big pieces of the team. So we'll see if anything ends up shaking out. I think from Joe Will's perspective, from Mike Greer's perspective, NHL, AHL, ECHL levels, they're always looking to improve. And sometimes the dust has to settle after July 1st, and that takes 3 to 4 weeks, sometimes even longer. And you kind of look to see who's still available, and does this player fit what we want to do? Do they fit our team? So I would not be surprised if they added a player or two to the mix, down the road as we continue along into the offseason. But for the time being, it seems like they're comfortable with where they're at and the acquisitions they made. But I wouldn't be shocked if something else happens before camp.
Anything else going on for you off the ice, away from hockey? Any plans for vacations, or you guys just kind of settling in and enjoying the rest of your time off?
My wife's pregnant, so that's kind of been that's
Okay.
kept us at bay all summer long. Yeah, we usually, how it goes. The season, as much fun as it is, it after a while it starts wearing on you. Just need to get away from the game a little bit, away from the rink. So we always try to do some sort of I would say larger in quotes vacation. That's probably not going to happen this year. So we got a trip to Truckee, which is just outside of Lake Tahoe this summer. It's beautiful. This time of year, it'll be nice and hot. So we'll do that. No big vacations. Keeping my wife, stationary, I guess, if you will, is probably our best approach. But just getting ready for the year. I mean, it's been a quick off season. It's been an exciting off season, trying to enjoy the final few weeks, as I'm sure you are, before the craziness begins. Yeah, excited about the year as well, though, because there's a lot of things to be excited about.
Well, congrats to the both of you. It's
Thank you so much.
always, yeah. I mean, look, being a father, I'm got a 16-year-old, so I'm way past where you're at. But yeah, that's really exciting, and I'm sure you're kind of getting into that point where you're like, oh, let's go. I want to
Yeah,
see my son or daughter or whatever you guys
totally.
are
Well,
having.
I'm following in your footsteps. You've got a girl on the way, so
Oh,
super
okay.
excited. But thank you very much. Yeah, it's as you know, my life's probably going to change a bit, but for the better. So can't wait.
Join the Girl Dad Club.
Let's go. I'm already looking at swag online. I know that became a big thing. So there's tons of hats and shirts. So I'm probably gonna have to pick myself up something like that
That's
to just
awesome.
join the club, as
Congrats.
you said. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, hey, you know what? Enjoy the rest of your off season. We'll talk to you again soon as we get closer to October, and hopefully things start off on the right foot for all three teams.
Well, I can't wait. And again, thank you for the time. Always love catching up. One of the best in the league in the ECHL, and we've talked about it for years, but I always think you should be moving to the next level. I know family and all those things play into it, and of course you love Wichita. You've been there for a long time and ingratiated in the community. But one of the best of the biz, and thanks again for having me.
Hey, thanks so much. That's very kind of you to say, but you know what? It's all about family. My daughter's here, like I said, and I promised her I was not going to leave until after she was out of high school. But hey, 2 more years, who knows?
I love it. Love it.
Well, that's Nick Nollenberger. He's the voice of the Barracuda. Always a pleasure. We'll talk to you again soon. Enjoy the rest of your week, folks.